you pronounce it.
This meeting is being recorded.
But thank you very much for the introduction. And I really would like to welcome you all to this a very exciting meeting today, where we are trying to focus on people working in the Oklahoma area on tribal opioid response programs. And I also want to say that it's giving us all an opportunity to listen to all the good work you're doing, but also to share with all of us and highlight what you are doing so well in your region. We have a lot of people on the line today that I'd like to introduce. First of all, in our home office, we have Kathy Tomlin, who already have spoken, and Parker Laney, who is helping us technically, and then me, and then we have people from CSAT that I really would like to introduce. First of all, we have our government program officer for the TOR grants, and that is Will Longinetti, Brittany Barber Alexander, Paul Kalbrenner, and I think I didn't overlook anybody, but I also want to introduce you to our, as an ATTC GPO, and that is Tyler Adams. And these people are very, very important to us and is going to provide you with introductions and Gipras and information and questions that you might have. Is there anybody I have forgotten? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Thank you. But I want to give the mic over to the people who are going to help us understand all the great work that they have been doing. I'm wondering if you all remember that we published a success story document, and I think it's 2 years ago, and the Choctaw Nation had a very nice description of what they did the first time around with the TOR grant. And one of the things that they highlighted was developing the Good Health TV that were offered across the community in healthcare centers and outside as a way of introducing and destigmatizing some of the things that we know often get stigmatized, and that's substance use disorders and some healthcare disorders. So, and one thing that they discovered and shared with us in this success story article was that people really appreciated the information, and they had a clear input from outside of the importance of input and understanding of what the program entailed. And many of the readers, I'm sure, also had family members in this program. So this was a very successful program. But this time we have two presenters. We have Jesse Roberts, who is the behavioral health director in the Choctaw Nation. And we have Carissa Kemp, and also from the Choctaw Nation. And they are going to co-present on how they have worked with their community in implementing the second round of the TOR grant program. So with that, I will leave it to you, and you may even want to introduce more about yourself than I was able to share with you. So I look forward to hearing what you are presenting on.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Jessie Roberts, and first of all, I'm the Behavioral Health Deputy Director or Manager, and so I'm sure our Director, Shauna Humphreys, wouldn't be too upset. But I wanted to go ahead and give her the acknowledgement as she is the Director over our Behavioral Health Department. She was actually the coordinator for our TOR 1 grant, which we both worked on. And then Carissa Kemp is our project director, which did most of the work for this presentation. So she's going to be talking a lot because she works one-on-one every day with our with all of our staff. So both are much appreciated. I have had the honor of working on the TOR 1 grant and the TOR 2 grant, and I love them very much. They're dear to my heart. And so with that, I am an LPC, and I've worked with Choctaw Nation for about 15 years. I am a Choctaw Nation tribal citizen, and I'm proud of it. And I'm really excited to be here. I appreciate everyone logging on and just being here. But Carissa, if you want to go ahead and take over the show, go right on ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As she said, I'm Carissa Kemp. I became the project director of the TOR 2 grant in August. And so we've kind of just tried to hit the ground running. And so kind of what my goal was today is I have a slideshow or a PowerPoint presentation, and I just thought I would go over each position that we've implemented into the TOR grant and kind of tell you what each position is doing, and then some of our key components that we've implemented as well. And then if you have any questions or need further information, Jessie and I can absolutely answer that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. So as she said, we're the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. We cover 10.5 counties. So a pretty big area. Rhode Island, right, is what you said, Jessie, is about the size of our coverage area. So just kind of give you a little background there. So our staff, Jessie is our Deputy Director of Behavioral Health, but she was also listed as the project investigator. So that's kind of what I put as her position. You have myself. We have Vince Maytubby, which is our cultural coordinator. We have Melissa Province and Waylon Thompson as our peer recovery support specialist. Our coordinator for that is Terry Leadham. We have prevention coordinator Abby Rowley, a criminal justice coordinator Latoya James, and we have a case manager for behavioral health, case manager Keely Butler, and RN case manager Mallory Barnhill. And like I said, I'll break those down and go over each role. So the prevention coordinator, she's trained in Botman life skills, and she's currently implementing that in several schools in the 10.5 counties. It's kind of been a struggle with COVID to get into schools, but she's done really well with getting into some, and she's getting more and more. So she's getting really busy as COVID's kind of dying down or decreasing. She co-leads a drug task force for Bryan County, which is in the Durant area of Oklahoma. The TOR 2 grant is participating with COIP, which is another one of our grants that we have for a drug take back day in April. So that's kind of a big thing going on right now. Prevention in the community areas, school areas, she's going, colleges, she's did some different things there. We have Jones Academy, which is our residential school in Hartshorn, and she goes there and collaborates with them a lot and does a lot of education for the kids out there. She does a drug trends training for Choctaw Nation Behavioral Health. And then we've collaborated with our Choctaw Nation Child and Family Services Department to conduct prevention with that department. So a lot of different meetings, a lot of good resources there. A big component of our grant, and I'll probably get into it a little bit more, is mental health first aid. So she's done several of those trainings so far. Again, with COVID, there's been a lot of restrictions. With that reducing, we've been able to get into more places and do some more of those trainings. So with our casinos, we've done some with staff there, and then the children and family services. Hidden in plain sight, she also does that. I like that one a lot. I've had the opportunity to go observe that. So it's a mock bedroom where drugs are hidden in with a presentation of social media. So to teach parents, teachers, dorm staff at our Jones Academy, where kids are hiding their drugs, where these things can be found. So that's been, everybody's really liked that. We've gotten a lot of really good feedback from that. So that's kind of our prevention coordinator and what she's doing. We have a criminal justice coordinator. So with tribal court, she provides court-ordered drug and alcohol assessments. So she does ASIs, which is the Addiction Severity Index to tribal members. She provides individualized services coordination based on clients' needs. So if she can refer out to our TOR to grant staff, but if we can't assist them, then we refer on to our behavioral health or any of our other grants or departments that can help. So she's a great resource in our tribal court system. She also, excitingly enough, she recently attended a competency evaluators training, and she's in the process of obtaining her national certification for that. And also at the end of this, I've included everybody's contact information if you want more specific questions for that. So another big component of our grant is we implemented within Choctaw Nation the MAT clinic, which is the medication assisted therapy clinic. The CNO, which is Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma residency program, launched that after all the staff completed their required training. We currently have 4 with a goal of to add 2 new patients each month to get those initiated in. So referrals are typically from the resident clinic, our staff, and Choctaw Nation Behavioral Health, but we can take referrals from whoever. Mallory Barnhill is the case manager for that, and she assists with all of that. So that's been huge for Choctaw Nation. It's the first time we've had this service. So we're super excited about that. The PRSSs, the Peer Recovery Support Specialist, we have the coordinator, which is Terry Leadham. She has done a phenomenal job with really collaborating. We've collaborated with different tribes. We have a meeting next week to talk about all of this. She's attended the ADSAC facilitator and assessor trainings. She collaborates with our MAT clinic. So she works with closely with our RN case manager and meets with the clients that are served by our MAT clinic. She's mental health first aid trained, like I talked about earlier. That's a big component of our grant. She collaborates and provides groups for Choctaw County jails in Hugo and Stigler. So she's going in, she does a lot of relapse prevention, education groups, anger management, because anger is a huge issue with relapse. So she really focuses on that. She's has attended the White Bison Mending Broken Hearts training, and we're also trying to get that for more staff, not just with our grant staff, but throughout the behavioral health program. So we're working on getting that for more of us with Choctaw Nation. The Warrior Down training is scheduled actually this week. She's currently in it right now, her and our PRSSs, Waylon and Melissa. So they're doing that currently. They're also collaborating with the Children and Family Services regarding program and recovery services. So getting a lot of data there, getting a lot of our referrals from there. They're going into our residential rehab centers, which is a recovery center we have in Tallahena and Chihuly, which is our men's and women's recovery centers. So they're doing groups there as well. And so pretty well most of the week they're going into either the jail or a rehab center that they're doing groups in. Also, go ahead, sorry.
One thing I just wanted to kind of to throw in there too is that these services were not offered previously. So the Tribal Opioid Response Grants and the funding from SAMHSA made it possible for us to create peer recovery support specialist opportunities and for our tribal members for recovery, and also the MAT clinic. We as a tribe did not have that previously. So with the TOR 1, it laid the groundwork. We were able to start that mission, And then with TOR 2, we were able to follow through with it. So to actually see these services being offered in our tribal community is, some days it's unbelievable. It's a huge, it's overcoming some huge things, and we're very proud of that, and we're very thankful because we are seeing a lot of help being offered where in areas that we weren't before. And so this is really bringing our communities in southeastern Oklahoma up to date so that we can offer services, evidence-based practices to our tribal members, whereas some of the other areas already were doing that and we weren't. So it's a pretty big deal.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Jesse. And if there's anything else that I'm forgetting or leaving out, Jesse, please feel free to jump in and remind me. So that was our coordinator. So our peer recovery support specialists, they're both certified through the state of Oklahoma as peer recovery support specialists. Waylon recently got his, and Melissa, when we hired her on, she had hers. So again, this is something that Choctaw Nation has never done. So we're doing, this grant is allowing us to do a lot of things that Choctaw Nation's never done, having new programs, having new positions. And so a lot of exciting things. They co-lead educational groups in the jails with Terry, also at Recovery Center and Chihuly. And it is so cool to go watch them share their own journeys and their stories and how they've overcame so many things in their lives. And so I've got the opportunity to do that and been fortunate enough to go watch them share their stories. And it's just, it's heartfelt and really cool. So they you know, I'm an LPC. I don't know if I said that. So, you know, as a clinician, you can see that side of it, but seeing people relate to each other on that peer level is just a whole new realm of support services. So it's been really exciting to see too. We have Vince, that is our cultural coordinator. So he provides culturally appropriate support to staff and clients receiving services through our grant. He meets with community, area schools, elder population. He's asked a lot to come in and speak at funerals, and to come to the community. He goes to the schools and tells cultural stories. And so that's been a really cool piece too. We have a bi-weekly staff meeting. And so he meets with us regularly to integrate those cultural beliefs and values and make sure that we're offering that into our services as well.
And Vince is also a tribal member that grew up in our community, and he overcame addiction too. So he's able to share that story on another level. And he's also a licensed professional counselor. So he's overcome so much to be able to contribute back to our communities, and for our kids to be able to hear that, and even for other people to hear it, it's just such an experience, and hopeful experience.
Yes, absolutely. And recently we got approved to do smudging. So Waylon, one of our PRSSs, Jesse, do you want to kind of talk about that?
Yeah, so that was a big deal too. It's taken us a few months to get it done, but we did not have the opportunity previously to offer culturally based services as far as like smudging. And so Waylon came in, and he does sweats on his own at his own property. But for our program, we decided that he would like to offer smudging and drumming, and he writes his own Choctaw recovery songs in our Choctaw language. And so actually last week, our leadership finally approved everything. So we're now allowed to offer that service here at our clinic, which is the first ever. We've never done that before. And so he's able to meet with people that are requesting those services to help them along their journey. And he can go out and he can pray, smudge, and drum with them. And that's just so significant in our culture to be able to provide that.
Absolutely. So again, like I said, this grant has allowed us a lot of opportunities to have the first. And we have a case manager. So Originally, with our supplemental funding, we wrote in to have a clinical psychologist and a case manager to kind of go along with that and help with other areas. We had a clinical psychologist in that position. We're currently trying to hire again. She left a couple of weeks ago. She resigned and had something else that she went to. So kind of our thoughts on that, just the idea behind it was that we could catch the youth that are at high risk. So the ones that aren't getting those testing, that we don't have those resources available for the ADHD, things that are higher risk as a youth to grow up in adolescence and begin misusing substances. So that was kind of the piece for the clinical psychologist. Unfortunately, before we got off the ground running with that too much, she got another position with that outside of Choctaw Nation. So we currently have that position open. The case manager, we hired her last month. She's assisting with data collection and input. So doing the Gipras, she co-leads educational groups in the community and jails as well, and provides resources and referrals as needed. So that's Keely Butler. Some of the key components that I wanted to include were that we've in the budget we wrote in for training for ASIs, behavioral health wide, so clinicians that wanted to do that. So we've been able to provide that to clinicians outside of even just the grant staff. It's Choctaw Nation Behavioral Health. Pear Therapeutics, and I have a slide on that, and mental health first aid. I'll talk about those. Ropes course, that was originally written into the grant. Unfortunately, our ropes course that we have in Tallahena needed some pretty expansive repairs. And so we haven't been able to get those done. We are still in the process of finding somebody and getting that scheduled. COVID put a huge delay on that. And so we're in that process. We haven't got that off the ground running yet, but that's still going to be a big component of this grant if we can get that fixed, or when we can get that fixed. Sober living, I know TOR 1 that we had originally helped with the cost of sober living and those houses. So that's something else we wrote into supplemental funding, and we are now providing that. And that, you know, that's been huge to the clients that we provide that service.
And
So
those needs kind of correlate with the fact that last year that, you know, we did, the courts ruled that our reservation here had never been disestablished. So that gave us more jurisdiction. So we took on our tribal court system, and I want to say that they reported to us that in 1 month they had a 600% growth, just because we had to take on our own, within our jurisdiction, we have to prosecute our own people, and we have the jurisdiction over that. So with that was the, you know, substance abuse charges, the controlled dangerous substances, all of those came with it. And our system just wasn't set up to provide all those services. And so now that we've been able to train other therapists out in the community, in our offsites, they can provide those services to the community, to the tribal members that are in their community. So therefore, if they're put on probation or whatever, they're able to follow through so that they can be more successful. You know, they can get those services, they can get their resources, and then they hopefully can follow through on that whole rehabilitative level so that they can contribute something back and they can overcome. And so that's really helped us in that way.
absolutely. Thank you. Pear Therapeutics is something else that we, Jesse had found them and really liked them. We met with them several times, and we also wrote this into supplemental. We haven't implemented it yet. It's still in our legal trying to get that all figured out to purchase these. But what this is, just kind of a brief description, and I've included the website here if you all want to look into it, but it is the first FDA authorized form of digital therapy, a digital prescription. And so what it is, it's an app that the clients that we serve, goes hand in hand with individual therapy, outpatient therapy, but they can access it at any time. They do different modules, they get points for those modules, and it has CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy training in it. So when they don't have access to the clinicians in behavioral health, and they're struggling or having a difficult time, they're able to log into this. It's 24/7. They can do those modules, and it has shown to decrease relapse. And so that's something that we're going to start implementing through, hopefully our psychiatrists and providers will prescribe those. So that's kind of one of the big things of our grant. And then the mental health first aid, it's a training, it's a course that teaches you how to identify and understand, respond to the signs of mental illness and substance abuse disorders. So that it was written into the grant for all of the staff to get trained in that and to become trainers. So most of us are instructors. We've had some new staff, so they haven't got trained in it yet, but going out and teaching that in the communities. There's a youth and an adult, so that's been a big component of the grant as well. And I've also included the website in case you want more information on that. So that's kind of what we're doing. Do you all have any questions or comments for us? And then I have all of our information. If anybody wants that information, that's how to contact us. And thank you all for allowing us to present.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Will Anginetti. Thank you for the presentation, and it's good to see your team here on the Zoom. One question I had just were all the positions you described funded through the TOR grant?
Yes.
More specifically, we were able to have visions with those positions. So with that funding, we were able to kind of look out into our community and see our needs and be able to kind of tweak those positions to what was needed. So yeah, they were all created through this grant.
And along with that, I know a lot of TOR grantees used funding early on, maybe in the first go around of the grant, to do a strategic action plan. Did you do anything like that, or was there like a kind of formal process for figuring out how to use the money later, in subsequent years?
Yeah, so through TOR 1, that was kind of our building block on it, and that was mainly consisted of case managers, and so they were put into those different areas. Like I was in the court, and so those few years that we were able to look and do that groundwork, then we were able to report back and use that data and all meet together with everyone and look to our future and design that and do like some strategy, some goal setting to figure out how we're going to accomplish those things. And I know that Pam and Barb, they always do a community needs assessment, and so that was very helpful.
And I know they are your evaluation team. Could you say a little bit about them? Because I think, TOR grantees, some tribes get smaller awards, some get larger awards, and some might not really have like a formal evaluation team. But if you could say a little bit about them, that would be great.
Well, Pam and Barb are amazing. I think they've been doing this for many years, so they really help keep us on track. And, we put out, we hope what we hope together. And then as the months pass by and we report back, then they just look at that data and sometimes we change it to see what would be accommodate the grant better. They look at any of the information that's put out through SAMHSA And they just really help work with us to be able to maximize that the services we're able to send out into the community. So it's just a month to month. They just meet with us. We talk. We're constantly asking questions, and they're always there to help us. So we're very grateful for them.
And
Chrissy,
they're actually on this meeting. So Pam and Barb, if you have anything to add, and yes, I second that. They are amazing and they answer our calls and questions all the time.
and they
Barb
truly
probably
understand
sometimes
our
wants to-
tribe. Yeah, they truly understand our tribe and the tribal needs and just the ongoing situations in the society and community.
And then we have a couple of questions in the chat. I missed the beginning. When did you start the TOR program again? So I actually came on in August of last year, but the actual TOR 2 was granted in September of 2020. Right, Jessica? Yeah. And then the name of our evaluating consultants. So we have Pamela Thurman and Barbara Plested. And what is, I know their names because we talk to them all the time, but like the name of the actual, their actual company is slipping my mind. Council Oaks. Thank you, Carrie.
Yes.
I knew Carrie would know.
Yeah, this is Paul Kaltschbrenner. And there's a question in the chat similar to mine. Yeah, you mentioned sober living, recovery housing. I was wondering, is that basically just paying bed fees for someone at a kind of accredited house, or are you creating that yourself? And then how long do you typically support someone in early housing, early recovery?
So we just get invoices, and so yeah, we're paying. We wrote in to pay like $100 deposit fee to help them get in there and get on their feet, and then just up to a certain amount. So we're not paying the full amount because we don't want to enable. We want to, you know, set that boundary to where we're not enabling, but we're helping them get on their feet and be successful in recovery. And so we wrote it in there for that, and we had a year left. So it's client to client based. So just kind of what their needs are and where we see how long that they need. Does that answer your question? And then
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. And then Carrie asked in there, what do you think ultimately made you successful in implementing the MAP program? So I totally can't take credit for that because I was not, I've been with Choctaw Nation for almost 15 years, but I was a clinician until August. And so I just came in in August, get my words together. So I can't take the credit for that. I think there was a lot of meetings and a lot of things that happened before I came on, and the MAP clinic was already kind of running. I know.
Debunking you're trading one thing for another, really coming to the front and educating the community and leadership and having that belief system, the belief that this is something that needed to be offered, and just that continuous work. You know, the research and the stats and everything, I think, was key to it. And we've had some really awesome staff members help grow that along the way.
So the other question is what the max amount for sober living. We do $300 a month across the board. So, you know, if it's $450, they have to cover the rest of that. So that's what we wrote in. Thanks, Pam. We do have some phenomenal staff. She just said that strategic planning from the outset with community input guided everything. And they were a huge part of that. So we have to give them credit as well.
Definitely.
I'm wondering if you used a particular community assessment tool to get your strategic plans, and what are the components of this, of the, in general, of the strategic plan?
I do think Pam and Barb can speak more on that because they have that experience and they're, I believe, I mean, they can really speak to that if y'all don't mind.
Hi, could you repeat that question, please?
You're muted, Kathy.
Thanks, Meg. I do that off and on. What, if any, did you use a specific community health assessment, needs assessment form, or did you create it with consultation with the tribe? And the second question is related to Pam's comment, having a strategic plan from the outset with community input. What were the components or elements of that? So did you use a tool for your needs assessment? If so, would you share it? And secondarily, what did you consider the elements of a strategic plan? Thank you for the first question.
I think Pam answered that in the chat, Carissa.
Okay, the community readiness model, thank you, Carrie, is a strategic plan, is Pam's response to that, so.
Yeah, that's good to know because there are a lot of different tools available, but not always, it's always helpful to know how a Native community has applied the tool to their particular situation. So using a specific tool that gives you a strategic plan was your foundation. And then it sounds like you did regular conversation with Pam and Barbara that where there was an exchange of the community's experience and input along with some suggestions. That was your process in developing these services and these job postings and positions and that kind of thing. Am I summarizing that accurately?
Yes.
Okay. And I also was curious, I think Jesse said it took a couple of years. I think that's helpful to know time frame. Like when you're doing something as comprehensive as what you described, that it doesn't happen overnight, right? And so I was just wondering, what was the community's attitudes and reactions to everything that you were doing? Did you have to go through a particular process in the community to get approvals? Did you get any pushback from the community at large?
So I think most of what she was speaking to was probably our MAT clinic, and there was some pushback. It was a brand new service. There's a lot of legalities to that, a lot of things that they see on their side. Again, I wasn't here, so I can't really speak. I was here, but in a completely different position, so I can't speak to that. We've had a lot of staff changes, but I think there was pushback. But it's been a slow process, but we're finally getting very successful in it. We're getting more and more. It's getting recognized. The whole health system, not the whole health system, but some of the people that were giving us pushback are seeing how successful it is and how the clients are responding. And so I think it's just going to continue to grow from there. So yeah, absolutely. It's not an overnight process. I know that there are a lot of bumps in the road, but you just have to continue to stay in there and be consistent.
And this is Will. Longinetti. I know you mentioned you are starting with, or you have 4 MAT patients right now, right? And that's, I mean, just given the huge geographical area you work with and larger population, seems like maybe you're starting small, right? Do you plan to kind of expand and offer that in like different locations and
Yes,
try and reach?
eventually.
Yeah. I mean, and do you just have one provider right now who's really helping manage
Yes,
those
as of
patients?
right now, so it's actually through our residential clinic, and so they do all of our residential family practice, and then they kind of do that on the side. My understanding is another provider is going to start in August, start implementing those services. So yes, we plan to grow, absolutely, and then hopefully eventually we can provide those services in other areas, because we are a large area. And so maybe like the Durant area, because our current clinic is in Tallahena. So yes, that's our ultimate goals.
And I think Andrea asked about, when did your initial TOR grant start and how long did it take for the community to embrace and support opioid awareness and eventually MAT treatment?
I'm unsure when our first, so TOR 1, I believe, was a 2-year grant as well. I could be wrong on that, maybe 3. So probably about 4 years ago is when that one started, and we kind of just encompassed that with the TOR 2. And then
Yeah, TOR 1 would have started in September of 2018. I think that's when
Okay.
you all got the first award.
Okay, yeah. So then, and we just kind of followed suit with that. And then the other part of that question for the community wise, I mean, it's kind of, they've all been, it's been easier with the community, I think. Of course, there's going to be some pushback from certain schools, certain places that, well, we don't want to educate. So for the prevention piece of it, there's those boundaries where we don't want to give the kids too much education, but we want to educate them enough to be aware. And so that's been kind of the thing with youth. Other than that, everybody's been very accepting, like our tribal courts, everybody is just, we need resources. So yes, absolutely. We want you to come in, and we want you to do prevention. We want you to do relapse prevention, all of the encompassing services that you're doing. So we've gotten really good. The only pushback in those areas is just the restrictions because of COVID. So we've had restrictions, schools have, our elder population that we ultimately wanted to reach, those community events have shut down because of COVID. So a lot of that had been kind of difficult, and those are some bumps in the road as well, but I think we're overcoming those, and things are starting to open back up, and the community is really accepting is what we've noticed. Our mental health first aid has kind of hit the ground running as well. We plan to eventually hopefully get into police departments and get that so that they, the clientele that they're dealing with, they have more awareness. So that's kind of our goals right now and our scope. Does that answer your question?
Hi, this is Andrea. I was the one that asked that question. I just started in this position for, I think this is my 4th month, and we're late to the ball game. So I'm trying to do as much as I can. It feels overwhelming, but I'm located on the Hopi Reservation. I'm Northeast Arizona, 100 miles northeast of Flagstaff, 60 miles north of the famous Route 66, Winslow, Arizona, standing on the corner. But my challenge has been getting a good sense of how it's impacting my community, the opioid, the local hospital, the state. We're smack in the middle of some other Navajo community. I haven't been able to find good data from the county, the state, from Indian Health Services. I finally was able to connect with a law enforcement officer yesterday, and he has a totally different understanding and scenario than from our ER staff, which I was thinking that was what was happening. So right now I'm overwhelmed and I feel all over the place, scattered. But my background is a mental health clinician for 15 years here. And then this grant wasn't going anywhere. So I said, okay, I'll take it. I'll take on the challenge. I'll see what I can do. So I hopped over and some days it's scary.
It's a totally different world, isn't it?
Yeah, and then just learning the terminology. And William is our grant. I always forget your role. I'm sorry, William from SAMHSA, but he's been patient with me. So yeah, that's why I'm asking a whole bunch of questions. So thank you.
No, absolutely. And so I kind of same background. I've been with Choctaw Nation for almost 15 years. I've been a clinician for a long time. And in August, I jumped over. So I'm 7 months in. So it's a whole new world. And so I'm like, you just have to wake up in a different world every day and just keep, you just have to keep going, and one little small thing at a time. And William, he's been patient with us as well. He's our GPO as well. So we're very appreciative of him.
Yeah, thank you both. And Meg just put in the chat, just in response to something you said, Andrea, the next webinar that we have for all the TOR grantees is going to talk about data. And, we'll talk a little bit about the data available at the federal level, but then we're going to have another TOR project present on what they were able to do to start collecting some data locally using TOR money. And, they're one of the smaller projects, so it'll give you, hopefully give you some ideas as far as what to do when, there's kind of a shortage of data or gaps in the data. So that will be later this month. Next week, actually, yep, next Thursday.
Next Thursday. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much for letting us present. If there's no more questions.
I actually had one, Carissa, when you were talking about your work with your criminal justice division, you mentioned that there was pushback there, and I'm curious as to how you responded to that and got them on board.
So not with the criminal justice, more so with the MAT clinic. And again, that was criminal justice. I think they have been very open to it. Like they want resources. Jessie, I'm sad that she had to get off because she actually started out in that position. So she would have a lot more information. She was the one that did all the groundwork. She was the first one into the court system. And so she would have a lot of stories for you with that. But I think they've been really open to it. Like they want the resources. They want all the help that they can get. So I don't think there's been much pushback in that area. Sorry if I wasn't clear with that. That was more so the MAT clinic.
No, I may have misheard them. Very good. I'm glad to hear that.
So what was the issue with the MAT clinic?
So I think it was just, it's a new service. There's like I said, there's a lot of legalities to it. I think that from what I understood, there was just a lot of hoops that had to be jumped through to make sure that we were implementing it, that wasn't going to be, there was controversy when that came out in the beginning, from my understanding on, do people think that that's enabling versus is it helpful? And now they're seeing that it absolutely is helpful. Like this is something that's very needed in our communities, and it's not enabling. It's not just a switch of substance misuse. It's a helpful tool to get to that recovery process.
So I imagine your peer support specialist could help out with that, especially you said you had an elder that was in recovery that was part of your programming.
So actually, yeah, our cultural coordinator, he has a story, like he years and years ago had substance misuse. And so he's able to relate to them, but he's also a licensed professional counselor. He's an LPC. And so, yes, it's very helpful. And then our PRSSs are absolutely, they have their own journeys, they have their stories. And so when they go in, they go to those groups. And like I said, I love having the opportunity when I get to and go watch them, that they tell their stories and the impact that that has, knowing like, hey, I was in your shoes, I was sitting in that prison cell, or I was doing this, and look at me now. Like, I'm here to tell my story, and I'm here to tell my recovery process. That's been huge. Absolutely. So we have 2 PRSSs that have their story, and then one of our LPCs, our cultural coordinator, just so happens that he also does. And so, and that's a big component to being a PRSS, is that you have to even get certified, you have to have that story. That's a big piece of that position. And so it's been hugely impactful.
My experience is also when you're lacking resources, if you could get somebody from the community who has that story to partner with you, they're more than willing to do that, even just to support their own recovery. And that can sometimes grow into something. But I was working with a tribe here in Oregon, and it was a small community. But the breakthrough was when a tribal council member went into recovery, and it changed the whole dynamic within the tribe about talking about and supporting recovery services and clinics and destigmatizing the community regarding substance abuse. So
absolutely, yeah, because when they see that it's like this hits home, this is one of our own. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like Jennifer mentioned Osage starting a MAC clinic, but yeah, that's very common. We fought the myth of trading one drug for another. If you're available, Jennifer, do you want to speak more to that?
Sure. Thank you, Kathy. Turn my camera on. I was hiding. So Osage was in a little bit of a different situation in that we had a physician who was an addictionologist. And so we actually had a MAC clinic before the TOR grant. That was like, he was hired in January, and in I think by the end of February, he had added MAT services to our formulary and started that process. But with our judicial system specifically, we really fought the just substituting one drug for another. We actually we're involved with our district court, so our county court as well, their drug court program. We had several people that failed and wound up going to prison because the judge would not allow MAT. So I finally got a little bit aggressive with that, and provided them with documentation showing that because drug court is federally funded, they cannot deny MAT, or they could risk losing funding. And so I kind of bullied them into it, I guess, for lack of a better word. And voila, we had this amazing success, right? And so that won over all of our district court judges. Had a little bit of a harder slog with our tribal court judges, just because they were a little more reluctant, and they also believed we didn't have that big of an opiate problem in amongst our Osage people. But we've just kept plugging away at it, sending little fact sheets, sending stuff to them and trying, and we're slowly wearing them down. But our big success for us was winning over our 3 district court judges. And one of them has actually become a pretty strong, outspoken advocate for Matt. And so fortunately, he's also our lead judge. So he is kind of leading by example there. And, we have one young lady, she actually just graduated our drug court, but she was a hair's breadth away from going to prison. And she kept failing UAs because she didn't know anything about Matt, and she kept presenting with meth. Instead, but she was taking the meth to mask the symptoms of the opioid use disorder, excuse me. And we got her into treatment, dug in there, found that it was opiates, not meth. Really, that was her prime suspect. And over the last 14 months, she has gained custody of her kids back. She owns a vehicle. She has her license back. And 2 weeks ago, she graduated from drug court. So she's my shining example of what Matt can do. And so, like I said, her case is part of what won over for our district court judges. Seeing how she blossomed, with the use of Matt. She just became this tremendous independent woman, and it was so amazing to watch. Her discharge summary was so fun to write. It was the opposite of everything for her admission, right? So that was, that you're trading one drug for another in the community. That's still what I encounter the most. And I've just armed everybody in our department with some facts. Anytime you hear somebody say that, you need to be able to spout some things and share that with them. And it's only through that repetition and it coming from everybody that they come in contact with that we are going to fight that and finally get it, I think, corralled and defeated. So I feel like we've made a lot of progress, but we have so much more that needs to be done. And I feel like that's across Indian country. I think my Choctaw friends would say that as well. You guys, kudos. You've done some really phenomenal things, but we got a bigger fight to get the rest of it, because I'm seeing opiates more and more often in our area of Oklahoma. So that's all I have to say. I could talk forever if you want me to talk about something else.
That's a great, no, you're that fantastic. That's what I encourage people to share, is that story. I was thinking, well, you said the word bullying, which isn't very native, but really bullying out of compassion, maybe. We need to create a new term because it sounds like underneath it all is compassion, right? You have compassion for people.
I advocated very strongly.
Yeah. Do you use particular fact sheets that when you're encountering?
I use quite a few off of the SAMHSA website and I think the NIH websites. I'd have to go in and look at them to tell you precisely where they came from, because I just have them downloaded all in a file and I
Yeah.
send them out routinely. So, but that's primarily, I think, where they've come from. And I try and keep it to just one page fact
Yeah.
sheets.
Yeah.
You know, our lead judge, Judge Tate, he would read probably a 2 or a 3 page fact sheet, but I know none of the rest of them realistically will. If we can keep it to 1 page and bullet points, that's better.
Yeah. 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 If you haven't accessed those websites, those are very strong. There are lots of resources on those websites. And our center has a website where you can get a lot of resources as well. There's a poster that our friends from JBS created a while back, I think it was last year, that you could just put up with, you could put it in the language of your community. You can, but it's basically nice posters that help educate the community about substance abuse and destigmatizing people's attitudes about particularly opioid issues. But thank you, Jennifer. That was great to hear. Yeah, I think that's on our website, but there are a few posters that show they're visual, and you can personalize them to your community that our friends at JBS created, where you can put them up in the community, contact information for people that might have substance abuse issues or family members who want to learn more, where to go, who to contact. And you can personalize the posters according to your community language. And if I was more user friendly on that website, maybe at the break, Parker or Meg can locate those. Oh, there they are. That's we'll just put up the resource for Native American through the ATTC network. The posters are on the center's website, and I think Parker or May can just pull that up and put it in the chat box before we're done today. If I had them handy, I'd show them to you, but it just came across my mind as I was listening to Jennifer's attempts to raise the level of awareness in her community. But it's great that you started with criminal justice and the court system, because sometimes they're a hard sell too. But also they tend to see more, and so they might be more amenable to being supported and being given resources. But I kind of wonder sometimes about that attitude regarding one drug over the other and where that comes from. Is that that's not necessarily a cultural perspective. If you give somebody, I hear the term enabling. Well, what does enabling mean from a cultural perspective? And is that a term that is culturally relevant? I come from a family where I mean, if you look at the term enabling and how people describe it, sometimes people think that offering a helping hand is enabling, and yet that's not my experience culturally. That culturally, depending on your tribe, you embrace all people in your community and you offer them a helping hand. So where does that concept of enabling come from? And is it really a cultural practice? Or is it a Western term that people have adopted that may or may not make sense? So I don't really know, but in the definition of enabling, I always used to joke that if you looked it up in the dictionary, you could see my mother's face. So and she's my native mother, you know, and we're from South Dakota. From her perspective, you never reject your family members, even if they're struggling with addiction. So I don't know. I'm just free floating and reacting to Jennifer's struggles with working that idea that you're giving one drug for the other, when obviously the data is quite clear that it helps people to stay alive, so therefore you can help them. And yeah, Meg just put the in the chat box the posters. Thank you, Meg. Let me see if I can pull one out. Okay, I've got one up, so I thought I could share it with people, just as an example. So here's one of the posters. There's several on that web page. Your health is important. Substance use can threaten it. It's never too late to heal. Have a courageous spirit and reach out now. That's just one of the posters. So what you're doing with the posters when you put them up is you're addressing the stigma or the attitudes that people might have regarding substance use. And then you can personalize the contact information here and put a logo in there. That's one example.
Most of these are either in Word or PowerPoint, so they should be easy for everyone to edit.
Okay. Let me, yeah. You can download all of them. Here's another one. Let's see. I can see that I've made improvement on my Zoom stuff because I'm moving a lot quicker than I normally do. So here's another one. Be brave and reach out. Recovery is not a race. Please don't feel guilt or shame if it takes longer than you planned. Anyway, there's a slew of them in there. There's a couple of examples. Free to use. All right. Are there any other stories that we need to hear before we go to our break? Brandy, hi. Our friend from Alaska.
Kathy. Yeah. So I just hearing the conversation about enabling, my own opinion, if it applies, is it's a Western concept that we have adapted to justify, or distinguish what is enabling compared to what is loving and providing. Being in the TOR program, my own was like, dang, are we enabling? Are we being a part of the problem by providing resources, access, such as harm reduction? The biggest thing is education. I feel like being in the TOR position, we are filling that gaps where, they're like, the family gave up oh, we're just enabling, we're not, truly helping. So that's where the TOR program comes in to fill those gaps, to help the families lift that stigma of you're not really enabling unless you're giving money or providing access, or the most important thing is, being human is reaching out to people that got shunned out, pushed away. And that's where the TOR program is able to come in and be that link, that connection from somebody struggling with addiction and getting them the resources. At the same time, communicating with the families, educating them. It's very impactful when we approach it that way. It's, once I started learning about the program, I was like, wow, this is like, are we really enabling them? Or, and I had to take a step back in this, how many people are being pushed away, shunned away, to where they don't even want to be in their community, so they go somewhere else, only to carry their burden, struggles somewhere else. And it's like, the biggest component is knowing they have somebody on the ground that fully supports them, no matter what stage of their addiction they're in, but also having that family connectedness where we're able to be that outlet for that family. I'll get a call, oh, so-and-so called me and they wanted some money. And it's like, right in that moment, just educating them, go with them. They need something, go with them. Not necessarily just dishing out money all the time, because that's when I feel like that's where the enabling happens. When they're know that door is open and they abuse it all the time, it's like, okay, have safe, healthy boundaries when that door is open. When you open up your house to whoever, or, a rental, if you're letting them stay there, it's like setting those good, healthy boundaries at the beginning, having them, and it kind of gets into case management, having them with a recovery plan, with a steps process, attend so many meetings. We have, everything is pretty much on Zoom now. If they could share, 2 meetings a week, and then just be like, oh, check in, once a week. And it's like, once we get that consistency, and let them know, then that's where the trust comes. And then they're able to come to you before they relapse, or, if they're struggling with, how many of them has this case manager, this case manager, this case manager. I was like, as a system, we are all enabling them, because then they turn around, oh, well, it is your job to do this and their job to do this, and they never did that. So it gets them, we being neutral helps them to not only be accountable to their own treatment plan or their own structure of resources, such as case managers, is like, we don't expect them to do all the work for them. And I feel like people collecting that paycheck is, oh, it's my job and this, I just have to do it. And it's like, no, get them in, get them engaged, help them get engaged with their case managers. And so if anybody feels like they're being an enabler, just working the program, it's that catch-22 and catching it when it needs to be caught. And because we got to remember the people we're providing these services to, how many of them are already pushed away? How many of them, a lot of bridges are burnt or doors are shut, or And so that's where us as TOR workers, we're that hope, we're that link, that connection, that drive to get them to actually own their own direction in their life, knowing they have that neutral support that doesn't judge or prejudge, or and then it's the families. How many of them there's trust when there's somebody helping the person in a neutral position. There's trust being created, being rebuilt. And so that's one thing I was trying to keep in mind on every day is, for a lot of people, we are their only neutral position. But thank you. And I just wanted to touch on that enabling, because, we don't ever want to come to work or answer the phone or the email thinking, oh, we're just doing this as our job. We got to see through the stigma, see through what everybody else doesn't want to see, the real person we're trying to help. So thank you. That was my 2 cents. And I don't want anybody to ever feel like they're being enablers, because that's such a derogatory term.
Yeah. It can be
and
very derogatory. Yeah. It's like shaming the helper.
Yeah.
But you
And
did a great
along-
job of describing what's the difference, do we stop caring? Even that concept of, just even offering mat services is enabling. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but I've heard it before, but I haven't thought about it recently. But yeah, thank you, Brandy, for that, because I think you touched on a lot of important points about what is truly enabling, handing them the money or being the neutral person that will listen to them when they want the money and helping them to see things in a different way.
Yeah, but it's so important, being in this work, not to normalize these stigmas that, comes from our leadership or people who say they know. It's keeping us in a neutral position where we are only providing help, education, intervention. It's so, it's like, the person who struggled with opioid addiction for 20, 30 years, and then we access them into the MAP program. How many of them, Manny, you helped save my life, a lot of people who have, I know or have worked with, is they have this in their head that they have to do this to keep on living. So it's getting them to acknowledge, everybody needs a little bit of help these days, or especially now. And a lot of them, I don't believe in medicine, such as myself. Our medicine is natural medicine. We can find it out in the woods. And so by them acknowledging that, trusting it and the process, working close with their doctors, that's where our linkage is, that's where our driving force is. By other people's in that circle, them seeing the success of one, it brings them that much closer to their own recovery. And so it's like, once they see one, you lead the horse to the water, they all come. That's why I let them know, what this started with the one person sobering up and 2 people, and now we got like 30 people, and there's still more to be helped, but it's happening. And it's like, a lot of them gave up on organizations or programs or why? Because well, as a society, we become so, oh, we're just here in our job and we're just got to push people through and blah, blah, blah. I feel like that's where this program is like, no, we're not like the other programs. We are not like the other clinics. We are, you know, we are here with you for the long run. And that right there is giving people the hope they need. Some of the people didn't even have hope to start with, but it's like just keeping our presence known, reaching out when we can, when it's appropriate, when it's critical. It's making an impact. Speaking, you know, from my own little community, nobody trying to push bad junk around here, because they know it's all about accountability and holding the ones accountable. And that goes all the way to, because we're off the road system, it goes all the way to our airline carriers. And so they know me, I'm the mover and the shaker. And it's like, when we're in such small communities, this is our family, you know, and it's when one is off, that's that fine universal balance. And it's like, oh, well, Brandy, you know, we're going to be kicking everybody out of the village. I said, no, the ones that are here, we're going to be there to help them, you know, when they start withdrawing, when, you know, and being such a small community, you hear that, you see that, and that's when okay, we're going to reach out. No matter if it's we get an answering machine or whatever, we just keep on leaving that message. And at the same time, reaching out to that family, letting them know we know their struggles and we know the strict boundaries they had to set up just to keep their own house safe. And so it's really good. And I thank you guys, and I'm glad I got to comment on this enabling, because it sounds so just not human.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to comment too, and I thank you for your comments. I just had an image, because of just being in a small village, I just had an image of you rushing over to someone's house once the community said, alert, alert, alert. I've been into some Alaskan villages, so I know some of the environment there, and thank you so much for sharing. It looks like I'm getting a high sign from Meg that we are approaching a break time. Meg, do you want to give us some, remind us of our structure a little bit?
Yes, so we're due to take a 15-minute break. I'm gonna take off a minute for that because it's 2:31 here in Iowa. If you could all be planned to be back at 2:45, then after we return, we have some breakout rooms set up for one for cultural integration, one for Gipra questions, one for harm reduction, and whichever topic interests you the most, you'll be able to go into that breakout room. We will have moderators in there to help get the discussion started. So if we could see everybody back at 2:45, that would be great. And thank you all for being here. Don't forget the Gipra.
And I just wanted to stress that we so much enjoy having you online, but we also would very much like to hear from you. So if you are having trouble sitting around for 3 hours, please remember to complete them before you sign out. So we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Are we all back pretty much? Okay. That time flew by for me. Yeah. Usually between the morning or whatever time zone you're in, the earlier session in the afternoon, for me, it's the afternoon session. We get people have to go attend to other things. So I want to personally thank all of you for sticking around for our small group and discussion and our message from SAMHSA that's coming up. Usually what we do at this point is just do a quick highlights, 1 or 2 point highlights from your small group discussion. So it looks like the bulk of people went to the Gipra session. So there must be a lot of questions about that. Did anyone join Paul and Ann in harm reduction? No? Okay. All right.
No, but we had a good talk.
Okay, good. Well, you don't have to report out if you don't want to, but
No, we had a very good planning meeting. So this was very constructive. Paul and I did a lot of talking. So this is fine. We are fine.
I'm glad. I didn't think you weren't, but that's good. I'm glad you had chance to talk. And so let's go to the larger group report out, and then my group can talk about what we shared. Did Will's group have a spokesperson? I don't know who else was in that group, but it was big. I know Beth was.
Kathy, you're muted.
Yes, I can't.
Yeah, sorry.
For a while.
Kathy, my middle name is you're muted. Tomlin. Okay, so those who were not in the other two groups, if you want to do highlight some of the key points, 1 or 2, it doesn't have to be extensive.
Kathy, this is Beth. I was in that Gipra group. I don't know if Will's still on here, but James he let us know some great projects that they're working on out there in California with Gipra data collection and batch uploading the SPARs. It's pretty incredible what they're working on out there. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about that and the upcoming Gipra tool changes, things like that. But it was a good discussion.
Yeah, I think probably will highlight some of those in a second as part of that section. Anything else anybody wants to say? Hello, Stephen. How are you?
Sorry about that. I had to step away. I know
Yeah.
I could hear.
It's okay. Yeah, it's fine.
But yeah, so we had, our group was going to be kind of a GPO and any other, Gipra and any other topics that might have come up, but Beth had asked a couple good questions about just some Gipra follow-up issues, and then I talked a little bit about just some of the changes that are happening to the Gipra program instrument, which I'll cover in the slides, and James Ward, shared with us just what they do in program in California that he works with, where they're able to kind of incorporate the Gipra data collection into their clinical intake process and really streamline it. So you're not doing your intake in your electronic health record and then also doing the Gipra. It kind of makes it one streamlined process. And I think that's really a great idea. If you're working with many clients, and then even on the other end, when you're uploading to SPARs, it then becomes possible to what we call batch upload So you're not manually entering, dozens and dozens of Gipra interviews. It all ends up going in a spreadsheet, and that gets uploaded all at once to SPARS. So yeah, so we had some good discussion about Gipra, everybody's favorite topic.
So true, so true. In our group, we talked about, we have Brandy from Alaska, and Adrian and Tiffany from Oklahoma, and Lauren and Brittany. So Adrian was sharing when we got kicked out of our room, what it was like to be the cultural coordinator who is trying to help people who are disaffiliated from their communities to learn who they are from a cultural perspective. And we just started talking about that. So I was interested because he went from that role to supporting the TOR grant. And then Brandy shared her experiences in terms of what kind of activities they're doing right now. Sounds like there's always room for growth. So beading, a writing group, which I thought was interesting. Getting the drumming up again. And then Adrian talked about just the ability to sacred ceremonies that you can't share on Zoom or wouldn't share outside of the community. Just being able to start doing that now that the COVID thing is kind of settling down a bit. So that I think that's pretty much what we covered without going into too much greater detail. So that's what we talked about. Okay, so I think any final comments or thoughts that people want to share before we move on? Feel free. Okay, so we're a few minutes ahead. Why don't we just go ahead and turn it over to Will with the GPO updates.
All right, thanks, Kathy. I'm going to share my screen here. Can you see that okay? Okay, great. So yeah, I'm just going to share with you some updates as far as things that are going to be due on your grant in the next couple weeks. And if you have questions, there will be time for questions at the end. I'm just going to be sharing a couple of slides. One thing to keep in mind is that we have TOR projects who are in their first year. We have TOR projects in their second year, and we have some that are even in a no cost extension third year. So not all of these updates apply to everyone, and I'm going to try and be clear about who they apply to. So TOR grant closeout. I've had this slide in all of our slide decks since September, basically, but the project period for the fiscal year 18 no cost extensions and the 2019 grants ended. So those grants ended completely on September 29th, 2021. And, we gave 4 months to close out. But this is just a reminder that if you have a grant that ended, and you haven't closed that out yet, we are asking you to submit a couple closeout reports. And, even if you haven't submitted yet, we still want these things just to finally close out the grant. So that includes a final financial report, a final progress report, and something called the tangible property report. And then in addition to that, if you had any outstanding Gipra data, we would ask you to submit that into SPARS. So I think most or all of you, if you had a grant to close out, you've probably done that by now. But if you're unsure or you have questions about that process, you can get in touch with me or one of the other project officers. The multi-year award submission. So this applies to this, and the next slide both apply to grants that are in their first year. So if you are a fiscal year 21 TOR grant in your first year, we're asking you to submit some documents by March 30th. And these are some budget forms that apply to your year 2. So you're basically letting us know what your year 2 budget will look like, if there will be any changes. So the first 2 documents it's basically the same form called the SF424, and that's kind of just a boilerplate budget form that you submit. And then the third thing is, if you are changing your budget, by more than 25%. So if the budget is changing by more than 25% of the annual award, then we want the new budget from you for year 2. If it's not changing by more than 25%, then you'll just submit a letter saying, our budget is not changing. All of these things you'll submit into ERA. And if you have questions about this, all this information was in your notice of award that you got from SAMHSA. And we also sent out an email with instructions about this. So the second thing that will be due along with that by March 30th is an updated program narrative. And, I don't think I need to go through all of these things, but it's basically an updated kind of status report. And it's also telling us whether anything will change in year 2. So this has some, summary of year 1, but also it tells us, if your goals and objectives will change along with your budget in year 2. And this will also be submitted into ERA. And you can also find instructions on this in your original notice of award. And so this and the previous slide both only apply to grantees that are in year 1. Now the mid-year progress report. So this applies to grantees that are both in year 1 and in year 2. Every year we ask you for a progress report every 6 months. So a mid-year report and then an end of year report. So we will be at the midpoint of year 1, or I'm sorry, the midpoint of the grant year, March 31st, which is kind of hard to believe. But we then give you 30 days to put together a mid-year progress report. So this report will be summarizing the activities over the period from September 30th, 2021 to March 31st, 2022. So you'll be submitting a summary of those 6 months. And we will send out an email in the next couple of days with the format for that report. But it's, we use the same format as we have before. But if you're in year 1, this might be your first time seeing that. And once that's completed, you'll upload that report to ERA. And, when you go into ERA, there's a drop-down menu and you can choose from specific things. So you'll go in there and you'll see performance progress report, or you'll see, if you're a year 1 grantee, you'll see, it'll say multi-year programmatic report. And that's how where to submit that. But we will send another email with instructions, complete instructions on that. But this is just to give you a heads up that everyone, should be prepared to submit a 6-month progress report. And that is unless you are in a no-cost extension. So if you're in a, 3rd year, you don't have to complete this 6-month report. Now, just briefly, as always, we touch on Gipra data collection. So if you're using TOR to fund treatment and or recovery, one-on-one recovery support services like peer recovery support services, we ask you to do the client level data collection. So you are interviewing the clients that receive these services at intake and then again at follow-up. And that we call it the 6-month follow-up, but it can be completed anywhere between months 5 and 8, following that intake. And then, we ask you to do a discharge interview as well. And we want you to do those interviews, the 6-month follow-up interviews for every client, regardless of their status, in that follow-up period. So whether they've completed the program or dropped out of the program. We still want that follow-up data. And then that data gets uploaded into our website SPARS. If you have any questions about that, please, reach out to myself or one of the other project officers. And then I talked a little bit about this during our breakout group. So we have made some updates to the Gipra SOAR TOR program instrument. And there is a new Gipra tool that is going into effect. That should be April 1st. So we sent an email out on the 9th, so last week, with a letter explaining the changes and a copy of the updated Gipra tool. So this is not the client Gipra interview that I just mentioned. This is the instrument that previously just collected the number of naloxone kits that you purchased. So going forward, this will be used to collect data on overdose reversals, fentanyl testing strips purchased and distributed, prevention education of school-age children, first responders, and key community sectors on opioid and/or stimulant misuse, and outreach activities that target underserved or diverse populations. So you hopefully got that email, and if you didn't, let us know. But we will begin. We're going to ask you to begin using that to collect data and keep track of these types of activities on April 1st. And we will have a training to go over exactly, how to implement that towards the end of March, or I think the first week of April. Excuse me. And if you have any questions about SPARS at any time, you can ask one of the project officers, or you can contact SPARS directly. They have a great help desk that's available to help. And we continue to have our monthly webinars, and if you missed any of the past few, the recordings are available on the TTC webpage, and I have the links here. But I know we had a great presenter in February on harm reduction in Native communities, Dr. Chisholm, and then on January 26th, we had a pretty great fentanyl and harm reduction presentation. We had a couple presenters, and I think we're really just scratching the surface of harm reduction. But definitely, if you weren't able to attend, or you have staff who weren't able to attend, check out the recordings. And if you don't have a regular conference call with your GPO, definitely encourage you to reach out to us so we can set that up. We always want to hear from you, at least on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, to talk about your grant activities, spending, Gipra, any issues you might be having with ERA. We want to make sure, that we answer all of your questions and you feel comfortable with the grant. So please don't hesitate to contact us. And there is our contact information. So I mainly work with the Oklahoma area, but I know Brittany and Paul, some of you may work with them. And so, you can reach out to any one of us and we'll connect you with the right person. And that is it. So thank you all for listening in. And then if you have any questions, definitely available to answer questions.
And I'll just mention, most of you probably noticed, but there will be another notice of funding opportunity coming out for TOR 22. So if you're TOR 20, you're eligible to apply again. We've done a lot of work on it. It's going to have a lot more information about allowable activities, particularly in the area of harm reduction and recovery support. So I encourage y'all to take a look at it when it comes out, and I'm sure we'll have some follow-up during the application period to educate people more about that and hopefully get as many eligible entities to apply as we can. And that's probably going to come out before the end of the month, right, Will?
Yes. Yeah, I think I think so. So, you know, we'll definitely be notifying all current grantees, and I'm sure that the team at the TTC will help us amplify that as well. Okay. Then if questions come up, you know, you can always email one of us. But I will turn it back over to Kathy and Meg.
Yes. Parker is going to post the survey in the chat. Kathy, do you have any closing comments?
Well, I just want to share how much I appreciate everyone's time today. It's always hard to do these quote regional meetings online, but it seems to turn out okay because of the people that come and share your thoughts and feelings about what you're doing. And as always, appreciation to those of you, all of you who are doing such great work. It's always impressive to me to listen to your stories and your challenges, but more importantly, there's a lot of, it seems like there's a lot of success that's happening, breaking down those attitudes, breaking down those barriers, moving forward, even though sometimes it could be a slow pace. But I just appreciate all of you sticking around for each other, and that we can learn from each other. That's the most important thing.
And I want to echo some of this, Kathy, because we started, if you remember, to develop a success story, a document to highlight what you all are doing and how impressive work you are putting together to make sure that Native community members have access to integrated MAT and cultural approaches. And I am just hoping that you also will consider joining us in keeping this living document alive so we can continue to add to the success stories that you have developed. So I just want to say that I love spending time with you and listening to how much you are doing and how important the work you're doing is to the Native communities you are working in.
I don't know whoever the coordinator is for Alaska, but Brandy, just in the chat, wants to be included on grant reporting emails. So I'm not sure which email, but whomever is in that area of the GPOs, you can connect with her on that. Well, I want to offer a blessing to all of you this afternoon, that you continue your good work and that you have a great rest of your day. I'm kind of looking at the East Coast to the Central to the West, and I have a few more hours of the day to fill up with work. But for those on the East Coast, I hope you have a good evening. For those who are in Central, thank you for coming, and I hope you get some time to take care of yourself. And if you're on the West Coast, I'll keep working with you until whatever your closing time is. So offer you a blessing for today. Thank you for being here. And I will see you, and hopefully we will see you next time at Care and Share is monthly on first Wednesday of the month. And that's just a check-in, very informal sharing meeting. Our monthly webinars are on the fourth week of the month, and usually on Wednesday. This month it'll be on Thursday, and our favorite friend from SAMHSA and a colleague Will and Jared will be presenting on that. I'll do a pounding for data and how it applies to your work. And it sounds like something in California is happening. I'd like to hear more about that. And then our regional meetings. And so we have 3 solid meetings a month on Zoom. You can connect with us visually if you prefer that. So have a good rest of your day, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.